From the dojo to the octagon, this is Budocast, your source for the latest in martial arts news, culture, and competition. From breaking fight results to evolving techniques, we cover it all. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this one. We've got a lot to cover today.
We really do. And, to kick things off, I want you to just imagine something for a second. Imagine being locked inside a cage with a trained killer stepping toward you.
Never a fun thought.
Right. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you get violently jabbed in the eye.
Ugh, brutal.
Yeah, so you blink, right. You're trying to clear it, but you realize you are completely blind in one eye and you're seeing double out of the other.
Just total sensory failure.
Exactly. Your brain is just scrambling. You've got absolutely zero depth perception. And in that fraction of a second, your survival instincts calculate that the safest possible move, the best thing you can do, is to completely turn your back on your opponent and throw a blind spinning kick into the void.
Which is just, it's wild to even think about.
It's insane. But today, we're really exploring that absolute razor's edge of combat sports. We're looking at a stack of sources that pull back the curtain on the complete life cycle of a professional fighter.
Yeah, the whole spectrum.
Right. It's a deep dive into, pure survival instincts, the mega million-dollar gambles of the superstars, and honestly, the brutal, often hidden economic realities of the sports middle class. We're going to take you through the highest highs and the absolute lowest lows of combat sports this weekend.
It really is a fascinating cross-section of the fight game this week. I mean, when you look at it, we have data points from Las Vegas to Baku to San Diego.
All over the map.
Yeah. And when you lay them all out together, they paint this rather terrifying picture of what the human body and mind endure under extreme violent duress.
Oh, absolutely.
The contrast between the top 1% of the sport and the regional prospects right now, it's just staggering.
It really is. So let's actually start that absolute top 1%. The bout order is officially set for UFC 329.
July 11th, right?
Yeah, July 11th, 2026. At the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, Conor McGregor is officially returning.
Ay, moly.
I know, right? It has been nearly 5 years since he snapped his lower leg against Dustin Poirier back in July 2021.
Such a horrific injury, too.
Yeah, and the opponent is Max Holloway. But the thing is, this isn't just a comeback fight. It's almost like a time capsule. I mean, this is a rematch of a fight from August 2013.
13 years ago. Let that sink in.
Right. But here is the massive variable that we need to talk about. In 2013, they fought at 145 pounds.
Yep, featherweights.
Now, 13 years later, they are fighting at 170 pounds, welterweight. And I really want to unpack the sheer physical reality of that, because a 25-pound jump in combat sports, it isn't just, adding a few inches to your waistline.
No, not at all.
It fundamentally changes the physics of a collision.
Oh, it creates an entirely different sport, honestly. Like, think back to that 2013 fight in Boston.
Right.
You had a 21-year-old Max Holloway and a 24-year-old Conor McGregor. I mean, they were kids.
Literally just kids.
Yeah. And their bodies were capable of enduring that extreme, punishing dehydration to make the 145-pound featherweight limit.
Which is brutal in itself.
Right. But at that weight, the fight is predicated on fast-twitch muscle fibers, incredible cardiovascular endurance, and blinding speed. The impacts are sharp, obviously, but they lack that heavy, bone-rattling kinetic energy of the higher weight classes.
Exactly. But fast forward 13 years.
Right. The human male body undergoes significant physiological shifts in its mid-30s. Bone density increases. Natural resting muscle mass thickens, especially across the shoulders and the back.
Yeah, just get wider.
And the kidneys, the endocrine system, they simply cannot tolerate the trauma of shedding 20 pounds of water the way they did a decade ago.
Yeah.
It's just too dangerous.
Oh, totally.
So fighting at 170 pounds isn't just like a preference for McGregor and Holloway at this stage. It is a biological mandate.
But strategically, carrying that extra 25 pounds into the octagon, that has to alter the game plan completely, right?
Oh, 100%.
Because you have McGregor, who has been off for 5 years, building this massive upper body, dealing with a literal titanium rod in his leg.
Yeah, he's massive now.
And then Holloway, who relies on a really frenetic, high-volume striking pace. How does that extra mass impact a fighter's gas tank when they are used to moving like featherweights?
Well, it places an immense tax on their oxygen consumption.
Yeah.
I mean, muscle tissue is highly metabolically active.
It needs to breathe.
Exactly. It requires a massive amount of oxygen to function, especially during explosive movements. McGregor has packed on significant, dense muscle.
Right.
So if he tries to fight with that same bouncing, explosive karate stance he used in his 20s, his cardiovascular system will redline by the middle of the second round. He'll just gas out.
You just can't sustain it.
Right. And furthermore, the strikes at 170 pounds carry devastating force. Holloway is famous for his legendary chin, right? I mean, he has absorbed thousands of significant strikes without ever being dropped.
Never. It's insane.
But he has been absorbing them from men who naturally weigh, maybe 160 or 170 pounds at a competition.
Yeah.
At welterweight, he is going to be taking shots from a man who is likely walking into the cage at nearly 190 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain, it just cannot be conditioned to take heavier trauma like that.
Wow, that's a terrifying thought for Holloway's chin. But, the psychology behind this return is just as dense as the biology.
Oh, yeah.
McGregor recently did an interview where he explicitly stated that it takes, quote, great courage, unquote, to rematch a man.
Oh, I saw that.
He actually called a refusal to grant a rematch, quote, a sign of a lack of courage. And reading the subtext of our sources today, it is glaringly obvious he is aiming that comment directly at Khabib Nurmagomedov.
It's a very transparent provocation. I mean, McGregor's trying to go to ghost at this point.
Seriously.
To understand the friction here, you really have to look at the staggering numbers Khabib walked away from. The UFC reportedly offered Khabib anywhere from $35 to $40 million for a comeback fight.
$40 million.
$40 million. And he didn't even blink. He turned it down to keep a promise he made to his mother after his father, his lifelong coach of Joel Manap, died from COVID complications in 2020.
Which is just so incredibly heavy, and that's what makes UFC lightweight Dan Hooker's recent comments on this so fascinating.
Yeah, Hooker had a hot take on that.
He really did. Hooker came out and essentially rejected the narrative that Khabib retired solely out of familial duty. Hooker claims Khabib knew the, quote, ins and outs of the game.
Right.
He argues that Khabib recognized that if you keep rolling those dice, eventually your luck runs out and you lose. So Hooker is framing Khabib's 29-0 retirement as this mathematical, calculated escape rather than an emotional one.
Well, you have to look at who is saying it. Hooker is an active fighter who has been through absolute wars.
Oh, some of the craziest fights ever.
Exactly. He has taken a tremendous amount of damage. He has bled, and he has felt the bitter reality of losing. When you exist inside the meat grinder of professional mixed martial arts, you view the sport entirely through the lens of attrition.
That makes sense.
So Hooker assumes that anyone who manages to escape with a perfect, unblemished record must have done so by recognizing the house edge and fleeing the casino before the dealer pulled a blackjack.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, he is projecting his own visceral understanding of the sport's cruelty onto Khabib.
I see Hooker's perspective, I do, but I think it fundamentally misunderstands who Khabib is and where he comes from.
How so?
Well, Hooker makes Khabib sound like a cynical card counter cashing out his chips at a blackjack table. But if you look at Dagestani culture, the word of a man given to his widowed mother, especially following the tragic death of the family patriarch that is an unbreakable sacred bond.
It's everything to them.
Exactly. It supersedes economics, it supersedes legacy, and it certainly supersedes the ego required to chase another $40 million. Why does Hooker feel the need to reduce a sacred familial promise to a Machiavellian calculation about rolling dice?
Honestly. Because the alternative is almost incomprehensible to someone wired like a Western prize fighter.
Huh. That's a fair point.
To an active fighter, walking away from your physical prime and $40 million defies the very DNA of the fight game. McGregor is the antithesis of Khabib.
Completely opposite.
McGregor is a man who is continually chasing the high. He needs the blinding lights of the T-Mobile Arena, the chaos of the press conferences, the adrenaline dump of the walkout.
He feeds on it.
Yeah. McGregor labels this the courage of the rematch, but in reality, he's addicted to the gamble. Khabib, conversely, approached violence with ascetic, cold calculation. He achieved utter perfection, hardly losing a single round in his entire career, and walked away at the absolute zenith of his power. It is an evolutionary split in fighter psychology.
And it seems McGregor might be trying to fight Khabib's legacy by proxy now.
Whoa, with the Triple Crown thing.
Yes. The sources mentioned this wild rumor about a potential Triple Crown fight. If McGregor actually manages to get past Holloway, he is eyeing Khabib's primary protege, the current pound-for-pound king, Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, and the Russian camp has supposedly welcomed the idea.
Have they really?
Oh, yeah. It is brilliant matchmaking from a narrative standpoint. McGregor knows he cannot bait Khabib back into the cage, so he targets the man who carries Khabib's legacy.
That is so smart, actually.
But, I mean, it's an incredibly steep mountain to climb. McGregor has to overcome half a decade of ring rust, a catastrophic bone break, and one of the highest volume, most durable strikers in MMA history just to earn the right to face Makhachev.
It's a tall order.
He is trying to bend both biology and history to his will.
But McGregor isn't the only former champion trying to outrun the biological clock by altering his environment.
Right.
Look at the staggering odds that just dropped for the UFC Fight Night 281 main event in Oklahoma City.
Oh man, the Usman fight.
Yeah. We have Kamaru Usman, arguably the greatest welterweight of his era, taking on Dricus du Plessis at middleweight.
The betting lines on this fight tell a brutal story about how the fight industry views aging.
It's shocking, honestly. Dricus du Plessis is sitting as a massive favorite, around minus 340 to minus 350. Usman is a plus 280 underdog.
Those are crazy odds for a guy like Usman.
Right. The analysts are giving DDP a 70% win probability, and they are heavily predicting a violent finish over a decision. For a guy with Usman's resume, a 21-4 record, an unprecedented run of title defenses to be written off this heavily is just jarring.
Well, the odds makers are entirely devoid of sentimentality. They don't care about your resume.
That's true.
They are looking at the stark, undeniable physical realities. Why is Kamaru Usman such an underdog? First, the biological odometer. Usman has been in grueling 5-round championship wars.
So many of them.
And his knees have well-documented chronic deterioration. I mean, it's an open secret in the sport that he has to walk downstairs backward on certain days because the cartilage is so worn out.
Oh, that's just sad.
Second, he is on a definitive downward trajectory, having won only one of his last 4 fights.
Yeah.
And third, the physics of the weight class. He is moving up to 185 pounds to fight a massive natural middleweight who fights with an incredibly awkward, blitzing, heavy-handed style.
DDP is a tank.
Yeah. DDP has 9 knockouts and 11 submissions. He does not point fight. He inflicts trauma.
The situation feels so desperate for Usman. It's like, I want you to imagine a guy who has spent a decade as the top performer in a high-stress corporate environment, right?
Okay.
He's totally burned out, his health is failing, but instead of retiring, he tries to reinvent himself by taking an even higher-pressure executive role at a brand-new cutthroat company.
That's a great analogy.
He is bringing all of his accumulated exhaustion and joint pain into a heavier division filled with younger, larger killers. Is Usman just a legendary fighter refusing to admit the dice are rolling against him, exactly like Hooker warned about?
It is the absolute trap of the aging champion.
Yeah.
You cannot leave your accumulated damage at the door when you step up to a heavier weight class.
It comes with you.
Always. When Usman knocked out Jorge Masvidal with that devastating straight right hand at UFC 261, that was the absolute apex of his physical power and reaction time.
One of the best knockouts ever.
Perfect timing. But the fighter stepping into the cage in Oklahoma City has fractionally slower reflexes. And now he is facing men who cut down from 215 pounds.
Huge guys.
The collisions at middleweight involve significantly more mass and force. A jab at 185 pounds does more structural damage to the orbital bone than a jab at 170. Usman is trying to rely on a feeding physical infrastructure against larger, naturally heavier frames.
And there is a terrifying common denominator hanging over both Usman and du Plessis in this middleweight division.
Oh, yeah.
The ghost that haunts the 185-pound Shark Tank right now is Khamzat Chimaev.
Chimaev has essentially traumatized the top of the division.
He really has.
Dricus du Plessis lost his middleweight title to Chimaev in a one-sided, grueling 5-round beating in August 2025. And Usman suffered a loss to Chimaev when he made his short-notice middleweight debut at UFC 294.
Plus, you have this new blood rising up at the exact same time. At UFC Baku, Ikram Aliskerov utterly dominated Bruno Ferreira.
Aliskerov is scary.
He is. He's now 5-1 in the UFC. His background is elite Dagestani combat sambo, and he's demanding a top-tier opponent for the Abu Dhabi card. And get this, the only 2 men to ever beat him, Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev.
The middleweight division right now is an incredible ecosystem of desperation and ambition.
It really is.
You have the apex predators like Chimaev creating a bottleneck at the top. Beneath him, you have former champions like Usman trying to reinvent themselves just to survive.
Yeah.
You have former champions like du Plessis trying to violently claw their way back to a rematch, and new blood like Aliskerov demanding to be fed. Duplessis even claimed that Usman initially tried to duck this matchup, stating the UFC had to actively convince him to sign the contract.
Wow.
The psychological warfare, the pasturing, the terror of losing your spot, it all happens before they even wrap their hands.
It is a meat grinder, and the margin for error is just microscopic. We're going to step directly inside the cage to look at exactly what happens to a fighter's instincts when the biology fails and the damage starts compounding in real time. But before we get into the absolute visceral reality of taking damage, let's take a quick second to acknowledge the sponsors that keep the lights on in the dojo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we dive deeper, shout out to our sponsors. First up, Elite Sports, leaders in premium fightwear for BJJ and MMA. Whether you're rolling or striking, they've got gear built to move with you. Check them out at elitesports.com. And if you're a school owner looking to optimize your dojo's performance, you need to check out Lotus by Open Black Belt. It's the ultimate management software for tracking ranks, attendance, and billing. They are currently offering a free trial to our listeners. Streamline your business so you can spend more time on the mats. Visit openblackbelt.com to start your trial today. You can find links for both in the show notes. And if you've got a story, news tip, or questions, send it to us at budocast.com.
All right, let's get back into it.
So we've talked about the agonizing decline of aging champions, but sometimes a fighter's biology doesn't fail them slowly over a decade, right?
No, sometimes it's sudden.
Exactly. It fails them instantly, violently, right in the middle of a fistfight. And our sources from UFC Baku give us one of the most incredible case studies in human survival instinct I have ever seen. I'm talking about Rafael Fiziev.
Oh, this story is unbelievable. To appreciate the magnitude of what Fiziev did, you really have to understand the immense psychological weight he was carrying into that octagon.
Yeah, set the stage for us.
So Fiziev was on a brutal downward trajectory. He had lost 4 of his last 5 fights.
Yosh.
And that included a horrific TKO loss to Mauricio Ruffi just a few months prior in January 2026. In the brutal economics of the UFC, a 1-4 slide isn't just a slump.
No, it's a death sentence.
It's a giant red target on your back. It is the territory where the promotion starts looking at your contract and wondering if you are worth keeping on the roster at all.
The pressure has to be paralyzing. So Fiziev is fighting Manuel Torres. The first round is underway, and Fiziev takes a brutal, violent jab directly to the eye.
Just right in the eyeball.
Yeah. He survives the round, goes back to his stool, and as the cut man is working on him, he realizes something terrifying. Coming out for the second round, his vision is completely shattered.
Completely gone.
He later told reporters that when he opened both eyes, he was seeing double, complete diplopia. He had absolutely zero depth perception. Now, a rational human being in a cage with a professional striker would immediately tell the referee, "I can't see, stop the fight."
Anyone normal would do that.
But Fiziev literally thought to himself, and this is his exact quote, "I don't need the eye to see that."
Such a badass line.
Right. And 15 seconds into the second round, completely blind in his binocular vision, he throws a spinning wheel kick, drops Torres, and finishes him on the ground. And he walks away with a $50,000 bonus.
It sounds like an act of pure desperation, when you first hear it. But if we break down the biomechanics of human movement, it actually reveals a terrifying split-second genius.
How so?
Well, when a fighter's binocular vision is compromised, they can no longer triangulate distance. You cannot throw a straight jab or a cross because your brain literally cannot tell where the target is in three-dimensional space.
It's just guessing.
Right? Your eyes are lying to you. But a spinning wheel kick does not rely on visual targeting. It relies entirely on proprioception, which is your nervous system's internal map of where your limbs are in space, and kinetic chaining.
Wait, I need to push back on this. You're telling me that in a cage with a guy trying to take your head off, turning your back, and completely losing sight of your opponent is actually the safest, most logical, tactical decision? How does that even work?
I know it sounds crazy, but it works because of muscle memory.
Yeah.
When you execute a 360-degree spinning heel kick, there is a crucial fraction of a second where your back is entirely turned to your opponent.
Right. Can't see them anyway.
Exactly. During that rotation, you are momentarily blind. You plant your pivot foot, you violently whip your hips around, and you trust the trajectory of your heel based on where the target was a millisecond before you spun. Fiziev realized that relying on his shattered vision to throw straight punches was going to get him knocked out. So he bypassed his optic nerve entirely. He relied on the thousands of hours of repetitive muscle memory ingrained in his hips and legs. He essentially turned off his targeting computer and flew manual.
But the risk is astronomical. I mean, if you are seeing double and you throw a spinning technique, your balance is already compromised.
Sure.
If Torres takes half a step backward, Fiziev goes spinning through empty air. His back is completely exposed, he is off balance, and he is facing the wrong direction against a killer. The line between winning a $50,000 bonus and getting brutally knocked unconscious and probably cut from the UFC was literally just a few millimeters of heel placement.
And that is the defining reality of high-level mixed martial arts. It is a sport of millimeters and milliseconds. If Fiziev had felt the crushing weight of his 1-of-4 slide, if he had panicked about his eye, his nervous system would have locked up.
He would have frozen.
Yep. But he stated he felt zero pressure. That total detachment from fear allowed his body to execute a flawless, high-risk rotational strike despite a severe sensory malfunction.
And performances like that, they don't just save a career, they echo through the rest of the roster.
How everybody notices.
Fellow UFC fighter Lerone Murphy immediately tweeted about it, praising Fiziev and Justin Gaethje. Gaethje, of course, just pulled off his own miraculous comeback, TKOing Ilia Topuria in the 4th round to win the lightweight belt.
Another crazy fight.
Yeah, and Murphy called these comebacks a testament to their character.
Murphy's perspective here is vital because he is dealing with his own psychological crisis right now. Murphy was an undefeated prospect until he ran into Movsar Evloev.
Right, he finally lost.
For a fighter who has never lost, that first defeat shatters the illusion of invincibility. It forces a fighter to question their entire identity. So when Murphy watches Gaethje get battered for 3 rounds and come back to win a world title, and when he watches Fiziev nearly lose his vision in his job, only to land a blind walk-off spin kick, it provides a psychological blueprint. It proves to the younger fighters that severe trauma and defeat are not death sentences. They are simply harsh data points for evolution.
That's a profound way to look at it. And while Fiziev is leveraging that data to call out Charles Oliveira for the BMF title, we also saw the absolute other end of the spectrum at UFC Baku.
The Yakiev fight.
Yes, we saw a fighter experience the ultimate flawless physical peak of the sport. A 25-year-old Turkish prospect named Abdulrahman Yakiev knocked out Julius Walker in exactly 8 seconds.
Just incredible.
8 seconds. He secured a $100,000 bonus. He now has 9 finishes and 10 wins, 8 of them in the first round.
Yakiev is living the absolute dream scenario of every combat athlete.
Literally the dream.
You step into the cage, your central nervous system fires perfectly, you take 0 physical trauma, you spend less cardiovascular energy than a walk from your car to the gym, and you leave with a life-changing 6-figure check. He achieved the maximum possible economic reward for the minimum possible physical cost.
But, you know, that scenario is the exception.
Oh, incredibly rare.
It is a tiny, microscopic sliver of the fight game. While Yakiev and Fiziev are celebrating their massive bonuses, our sources also pull back the curtain on the incredibly dark, punishing economic reality for the fighters who don't land the 8-second knockout.
This is the hard stuff to look at.
It really is. The California State Athletic Commission recently released the official payouts for the PFL San Diego card.
Right, because California law mandates the public disclosure of fighter purses. So we occasionally get a raw, unfiltered look at the true financial structure of these promotions. And the numbers from the PFL paint a deeply sobering picture of the collapse of the MMA middle class.
Let's look at the main event. You have A.J. McKee, an established elite star. McKee made a flat $100,000 purse.
Yeah.
His opponent was an undefeated prospect from Kazakhstan named Salamat Izbulayev. Izbulayev stepped into the cage against one of the best featherweights on the planet, put his pristine undefeated record on the line, and the PFL paid him exactly $10,000.
Wow.
And he lost. He lost his 0 for 10 grand.
We really need to break down the anatomy of a $10,000 fight purse because the public often misunderstands this entirely.
Yeah, please do.
When a fan sees a fighter on national television, they assume that fighter is wealthy. But let's do the math on Izbulayev's $10,000.
Okay, let's hear it.
Instantly, 20% goes to his management team. Another 10 to 15% goes to his head coach and his gym. He has to pay for his own training camp, specialized sparring partners, and nutritionists. He has to fly his cornermen from Kazakhstan to San Diego and pay for their hotel and food.
That adds up so fast.
Then, he is taxed as an independent contractor. After expenses, Isbulaev likely walked away from a cage fight against a world-class killer with maybe $2,000 or $3,000 in actual profit.
It's barely enough to cover the medical bills if he sustained a significant injury. I can't wrap my head around this. An undefeated record is a fighter's single most valuable bargaining chip.
It's everything.
Right. It is the shiny, marketable asset that promoters desperately want to buy. Why would Isbulaev sell his undefeated aura to the PFL for less than the price of a used Honda Civic? The math just doesn't make sense to me.
It makes sense when you understand the predatory nature of promotional leverage.
Okay.
For a regional fighter grinding away in Kazakhstan, an offer from the PFL is a mirage of global opportunity. The promoter's logic is brutal, right? They offer him pennies, knowing he will accept the extreme risk because he believes he can beat A.J. McKee.
He believes in himself.
Exactly. Isbulaev thinks, if I beat McKee on national television, I steal his momentum, I become a star, and my next contract is worth $500,000.
So it's a massive gamble.
The promotion leverages his ambition against his empty bank account. It is a calculated corporate strategy. Promoters know it is far cheaper to feed desperate, low-cost, undefeated regional fighters to their established stars than to actually build a well-paid middle class of athletes.
That is just bleak.
Isbulaev took a massive physical risk, lost his biggest negotiating asset, and basically fought for free.
It is a devastating reality check, and it perfectly contextualizes the retirement announcement we saw on that exact same PFL card.
Ariane Lipski.
Yes, Ariane Lipski, historically known as the Queen of Violence. She announced her retirement at the age of 32 after losing to Jenna Bishop. She was a former KSW flyweight champion. She spent years in the UFC, and she walks away with a record of 18 wins and 12 losses.
30 fights.
30 professional MMA fights by the age of 32.
Think about the cumulative trauma required to have 30 professional fights by your early 30s.
I can't even imagine.
The training camps, the concussions, the torn ligaments, the drastic weight cuts. Her body has aged decades in the span of 10 years.
And her retirement statement was profoundly haunting. She wrote, quote, "Honor should never be sacrificed. Defeat is painful. It's bitter, but it shapes our character. Victory is sweet, but it can deceive the heart of anyone who isn't grounded."
What a quote.
I really want to zero in on that specific phrase. Victory deceives the heart. It echoes exactly what Dan Hooker said earlier about Khabib and the allure of rolling the dice. Is Lipski essentially saying that winning is a narcotic?
Yeah, I think so.
That the momentary glory of a victory actually tricks fighters into ignoring their deteriorating bodies and staying in the sport far too long?
Absolutely. Winning is an intoxicating chemical cocktail. When your hand is raised, the roar of the arena and the flood of dopamine mask the physical toll.
It hides the pain.
Right. It convinces a 32-year-old body with the joint deterioration of a 50-year-old that it is still young, invincible, and capable of one more run. It keeps fighters trapped on the treadmill. When Lipski says victory deceives the heart, she is acknowledging that success creates a dangerous illusion of longevity. Defeat, however, strips that illusion away violently. Defeat forces you to look in the mirror.
It's the reality check.
Exactly. For Lipski, suffering losses late in her career was the bitter medicine that cleared the fog. It allowed her to clearly see that her biological odometer had maxed out, and it gave her the clarity to leave the table with her honor intact before she sustained irreversible damage.
It is such a profound, heavy observation. But, while Lipski has found the peace to walk away, we have another fighter currently drowning under the weight of trying to survive the system. Let's look at the Indian UFC prospect, Anshul Jubli.
Jubli represents one of the most perplexing and heartbreaking psychological phenomena in all of martial arts. The massive canyon between gym performance and cage performance.
Yeah, because Jubli is currently 0-2 in the UFC. He got knocked out by Mike Breeden, and then he suffered a devastating 19-second knockout loss to Quillen Salkild.
Just a rough start.
He is dealing with injuries, and he is rumored to fight Magomed Zanikov in August in a bout that will almost certainly determine if he gets cut from the UFC roster. But our sources highlight a massive contradiction here.
The Sean Strickland stuff.
Yes. Sean Strickland, the former UFC middleweight champion, a guy known for having some of the most intense, grueling sparring sessions in the world, recently trained with Jubli at the UFC Performance Institute.
Right.
And Strickland was blown away.
Which is saying something.
He went on record saying Jubli was throwing it down, that he was tapping all of us out, and that the guy absolutely knows his shot.
It creates a fascinating paradox. How does a fighter possess the elite technical ability to submit world champions behind closed doors, but then step under the arena lights and get knocked unconscious in 19 seconds, by an unranked opponent.
Yes, that is exactly what I want to understand. What is physically happening to his brain and his nervous system when he transitions from the practice mats to the actual octagon?
Or what?
Why does the technique just vanish?
Well, it is a catastrophic failure to regulate the endocrine system under pressure, specifically regarding an adrenaline dump.
Okay, unpack that.
In the gym, even when sparring Sean Strickland, the subconscious stakes are low. There is no crowd, no broadcasting cameras, no threat of losing your job.
You're just training.
Right. Your central nervous system remains relatively relaxed. Because you are relaxed, your breathing is regulated, and your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, complex, problem-solving center of the brain, remains fully engaged. You can see openings, chain submissions together, and flow. Jubilee clearly possesses world-class technique in this state.
Obviously, if he's tapping Strickland.
But when he steps into the UFC octagon, the context changes entirely.
Especially considering he is carrying the expectations of an entire country on his back. I mean, he is the singular MMA hope for 1.4 billion people in India.
The psychological weight of that is crushing.
It has to be.
When the cage door locks and that pressure hits, the brain's fear center triggers a massive, uncontrollable release of adrenaline and cortisol. The brain literally perceives the environment as a life or death threat, like a lion attack.
A literal fight or flight response.
If a fighter cannot cognitively regulate that chemical dump, their heart rate spikes to 180 beats per minute before the referee even says fight.
Wow.
The fast-twitch muscles flood with lactic acid, becoming stiff and heavy. The fighter experiences extreme tunnel vision, and prefrontal cortex essentially shuts down. All of those complex, relaxed grappling techniques he used on Strickland evaporate. The body reverts to gross motor skills and stiff reactive survival mechanisms.
So he just freezes.
His chin drifts up, his footwork gets heavy, and he freezes. The opponent in the cage didn't beat Jubilee's technique. The sheer terror of the environment beat his nervous system.
And Jubilee seems to be trying to use humor to cope with the absurdity of his situation in his training environment. He joked about Strickland's notoriously abrasive personality, saying that Strickland is maybe not racist or low-key racist. Either way, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a classic gym quote.
Right. It's a bizarre insight into the strange, unfiltered camaraderie that forms on the wrestling mats when two guys are just trying to survive each other.
The mats are a primal equalizer. Societal norms and polite conversation vanish when you are physically exhausted and trading sweat and blood. It breeds a very specific, raw type of mutual respect that often manifests in dark or completely inappropriate humor.
Definitely.
But that humor and gym camaraderie won't save Jubilee in August. His entire career hinges on his ability to take the relaxed, lethal technician he is inside the Performance Institute and transport that exact psychology into the terrifying glare of the arena.
We've spent this entire deep dive looking at the brutal realities of MMA. You know, the aging champions fighting their biology, the predatory economics of regional prospects, the paralyzing pressure that shuts down a fighter's nervous system.
It's a lot of heavy stuff.
It is. But I want to close by looking at one final source today that shows what happens when an athlete completely masters all of those elements, when they conquer their nerves, perfect their technique, and achieve absolute, undeniable greatness. To do that, we are stepping out of the octagon and into the boxing ring.
A truly masterful performance by Jaron Ennis.
Absolutely. Ennis fought Xander Zayas at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn incredibly on his own birthday.
There's a way to celebrate.
Right, and Ennis just dismantled him. He stopped Zayas in 7 rounds, scoring 3 vicious knockdowns along the way. He's now the unified WBA and WBO junior middleweight champion.
Well deserved.
And our sources highlighted a very specific evolution in Ennis's style during this fight. They noted that he transitioned from being a switch-hitting wizard, you know, a guy known for slick, flashy, untouchable technique, into a full-blown destroyer. He utilized speed, devastating power, and an intense, suffocating pressure that Zayas simply had no answers for, despite showing a tremendous amount of heart.
The parallels between the biomechanics of Ennis's performance in the boxing ring and the realities we've discussed in MMA are vital here.
How so?
Well, Ennis unifying those belts with a violent, definitive stoppage is exactly the kind of undeniable apex performance that Enschel Jubilee is desperate to unlock within himself, and it is the exact level of dominance that Kamaru Usman is trying to violently claw his way back to.
But I want to dig into the mechanics of that evolution. The sources call him a wizard turning into a destroyer. Why is that transition from flashy point fighter to knockout artist an absolute requirement for achieving greatness at the world championship level?
Because sheer speed and athletic wizardry eventually hit a hard ceiling. When a boxer is a rising prospect, they can rely on their fast twitch reflexes. They can drop their hands, switch stances constantly, and dazzle lower-tier opponents with volume and movement. They play the role of the untouchable wizard.
Right, looking good for the highlights.
But as you climb into the elite unified championship tiers, you encounter men who are just as fast, just as tough, and whose camps have spent hundreds of hours scouting your flashy tricks. Zayas is an incredibly high IQ fighter. He was not going to be broken by mere feints and speed.
So what did he do?
To break a world-class opponent, you must develop undeniable consequential power.
But how does a fighter actually do that? How do you just decide to hit harder?
It requires a fundamental shift in your physical base. You have to stop bouncing on your toes and learn how to literally sit down on your punches.
Ground yourself.
Yes. It involves dropping your center of gravity, planting your feet firmly into the canvas, and violently rotating your hips and shoulders to transfer the kinetic energy from the floor through your core and into your knuckles. Ennis realized that flashing his jab might win him rounds on the scorecards, but imposing structural physical trauma is what breaks an opponent's will and wins undisputed championships. He cut off the ring, trapped Zayas, and forced the violent collisions.
It sounds so simple, but it's so hard to execute.
It perfectly mirrors the evolution fighters like Max Holloway had to undergo. Holloway started as a flashy, spinning volume striker in his early 20s and had to evolve into a devastating tactician who understands distance, timing, and how to sit down on his crosses to actually shut the lights out.
You know, whether you are prepping for a meeting or learning a new skill, Boots Ennis is a case study in not just relying on your natural wizardry or talent, but actively developing your finishing power to close the deal. It is the ultimate realization that talent only gets you into the room, but the ability to execute finishing power under extreme pressure is what actually closes the deal.
Yeah.
Ennis didn't rely on the judges. He didn't leave his fate to chance. He walked into the Barclays Center, took the dice completely off the table, and forced his reality onto his opponent.
He removed the gamble entirely. And in a sport defined by risk, achieving absolute certainty inside the ring is the rarest and most difficult thing a human being can do.
Which brings this entire deep dive full circle in a really profound way. When you step back and look at the sheer spectrum of human experience we have covered today, it is staggering.
It really is.
Consider the brutal math of Salamat Isbulaev, handing over his undefeated record to the PFL for a $10,000 check that won't even cover his training expenses.
A harsh reality.
Contrast that crushing reality with Khabib Nurmagomedov looking at $40 million in guaranteed money and walking away without a second thought just to honor a promise to his widowed mother.
Completely different worlds.
Think about Anshul Jubilee, paralyzed by the weight of 1 billion people, his body betraying him in 19 seconds. And think about Rafael Fiziev, his vision shattered, his career hanging by a thread, making the terrifying split-second decision to blindly throw a spinning heel kick into the void.
Pure survival.
Combat sports is not just a physical contest of mixed martial arts or boxing. It is the absolute, ultimate, unfiltered test of human conviction. The next time you watch a fighter step into the cage or the ring, under the blinding lights of the arena, listening to the roar of the crowd, ask yourself, are they fighting for the money? Are they fighting for their legacy? Or are they just addicted to the roll of the dice?
That's the real question.
That's it for this episode of Budocast. Thanks for joining us as we break down the latest in martial arts. We'll be back soon with more news, stories, and insights. Until then, train hard, stay humble.